Should the Denver Broncos consider making a trade before training camp begins next month? Can Sean Payton trust the wide receiver room around his sophomore quarterback in Bo Nix? Could a family reunion be coming for the Denver Nuggets? And could the Colorado Avalanche potentially make a surprising offseason move to help maintain their title contention window? All things to come on a jam-packed rundown. And we will bring in friend of the show, Denver sports analyst at DenverSports.com, Scrappy Will Peterson, to help us begin in the world of the NFL, where one of the main questions I'd say many are asking about the Denver Broncos as they are now into their summer break ahead of training camp is who's going to be the odd man out in a crowded running back room. They bring in J.K. Dobbins, the former Charger, on a one-year deal. They draft R.J. Harvey late in the second round to go along with returning third-year player Jaleel McLaughlin and second-year player Audric Estime. And that doesn't even begin to touch on the usual fringe suspects like a Tyler Bidet or a Blake Watson. So, Will, what is your overall assessment of this running back room, just in the sense of the pieces that they have and also how they project to be better than last season?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you signed J.K. Dobbins, you booted someone out of that room. There's just not enough roster spots to go around for everyone. And you look at Bidet and Watson as probably more practice squad type guys. So that means either Jaleel McLaughlin or Audric Estime is just not making this team, in my opinion. And Jaleel is a different type of skill set, whereas Audric, it feels like you already have a couple Audric Estimes on the roster. He was a fifth-round pick. He didn't get a jersey in a playoff game, Richie. They have upgraded in a major way. Both J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, 100% locks to make this football team. To me, I would look to move Audric Estime now, see what you can get back, maybe a 6th, 7th-round pick, and just start to kind of pare down that crowded running back room. Versus if you cut him at the end of August, no GM's going to play ball with you then. They're going to say, just cut him. I'll just get him on the waiver wire. If you want to get some value in return between now and camp is when you should try to move him.
I read your piece, your column at DenverSports.com, that articulated that the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton should look to trade Audric Estime, even for a late day 3 pick, like a 6th-round, 7th-round pick, something in return before this season, because he, in your eyes, Will Peterson, appears to be the presumptive candidate, the obvious choice to become the odd man out. My follow-up question to you on that is, why? I don't know that I'm 100% sold that that's the case, because I look at Jaleel McLaughlin and I understand the change of pace potential that he has. He clearly has speed as his secret weapon, if you were going to assign one. But R.J. Harvey has speed too. They both run 4.40s, and R.J. Harvey is clearly going to be used in the passing game the way that Jaleel McLaughlin was attempted to be used in space last season. So why is it that Audric Estime is clearly the odd man out, but Jaleel McLaughlin isn't? Everything he can do, R.J. Harvey can do better?
Well, first of all, Jaleel at least made a play or two last year that you can remember. I mean, think about the touchdown he scored in Tampa Bay on 4th down. The only plays we remember from Audric is the fumble on his first ever carry, another key fumble. And then, as I mentioned, they go to a playoff game, and the head coach says, I trust Tyler Bidet more, who hasn't played since week 4, versus Audric Estime, who's been on this roster all season long. I mean, that's the definition of tipping your hand that Audric Estime has completely fallen out of favor. And what do? They take a 2nd-round running back, and then they sign J.K. Dobbins, the best remaining free agent, in June. Like, they're providing us breadcrumbs left and right that they're not big fans of Audric Estime. I see that, you're saying what a lot of people say. Well, maybe it's Jaleel. Maybe it's not Audric. Just go listen to Sean talk about Jaleel last year. He is a fan. He loves how he gets there at 5 a.m, first one in, last one out type of guy. With Audric, it feels like he's trying to do this sort of hollow, like, well, you're going to see him more. You're going to see him more. To me, they're just trying to bump up any sort of minimal trade value he may have. Actions speak louder than words, and their actions with Audric Estime have not been real flattering.
I do think there is a real world or a real potential that both Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin could find themselves the odd man out, and a guy like Tyler Bidet, who got the jersey over Audric Estime in that playoff game, comes more into Sean Payton's favor as a complementary piece alongside R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. But I do think there's something that Audric Estime has that none of the other backs can replicate, that could be relevant for this upcoming season, and that is that he's the same body type, the same archetype as J.K. Dobbins in terms of a bigger physical power runner. Did he do it effectively enough last year? No. But J.K. Dobbins, who in his 5 years in the NFL has suffered 3 significant lower body injuries, and that's really been the one thing that's hampered him from being one of the better, more productive backs in the league. So I know with the voodoo magic of Bo Lowry and all the ways that the Broncos have become one of the most oft injured and now the most least injured teams in the NFL. But if that doesn't hold up and J.K. Dobbins' career path continues down the way that it is, and he gets injured again, Audric Estime, in theory, provides the best body type stylistic replacement for that style of runner. Does he not?
Okay, sure. But first of all, J.K. Dobbins played 13 games last year, which is pretty good for a running back. And second of all, like you said, the Broncos have been nothing but healthy under Sean Payton. They are rolling the dice that Dobbins will be healthy. That's why they signed him. So I don't know, like, you know, I think we're being a little unfair to J.K. Dobbins. Like, well, he's going to get hurt, so therefore you got to keep Audric Estime. I just can't live my life that way. I'm going to assume that J.K. Dobbins is going to play 13, 14, 15 games for the Denver Broncos this season. I'll patch it together in the couple he doesn't. Like, you wouldn't have signed the guy in the first place if you're like, well, he's just going to play 4 games, then get hurt because that's what he does. That's just not worth it for the Broncos to go down this path. They are assuming he's going to be healthy. You can't live your life going, well, he's probably going to get hurt, so we better keep Estime. No, let's assume this guy does stay on the football field, and therefore Audric Estime just doesn't have a role.
In the world of assumptions, Will Peterson, I want to shift gears to the wide receiver room. Are we just assuming that one of these handful of players in Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, are we just assuming that one of them is going to rise to the occasion to be a number 2 level wide receiver in the NFL opposite of Courtland Sutton, who some think truly isn't a real wide receiver NFL 1 in this league? Are we making some assumptions about which guy or if a guy in that room can rise to be a number 2, or could we be looking at some problems in that area this upcoming season?
No, we're definitely making assumptions. I wrote about it yesterday. Pro Football Focus came out with their receiving core rankings, and the Broncos were 22nd in the NFL out of 32 teams. To me, now that you have RJ and JK, the receiving core is the biggest question mark on this team for sure. Like, Evan Ingram will help, no doubt about it, as a reliable tight end. But then after that, you know, you could ask 10 different people that work at Denver Sports, and they may give you 10 different answers in terms of power ranking, you know, Courtland and then everyone else. Like, to me, I think it's Mims at 2, it's Vele at 3, it's Pat Bryant at 4, it's Franklin at 5. Now, that's just receivers. If I was including Ingram, I'd probably put him at 2 behind Sutton. But you're right, between Mims, Vele, Franklin, Bryant, whoever you talk to, someone's going to have a different name. The problem is we live here, Richie. We cover this team. We are so familiar with this team. If you went and polled football fans in good markets, you know, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, the list goes on, New England, San Francisco, name 2 Broncos wide receivers. They'd get Courtland Sutton. I'm not so sure they would get another one. So it's a valid question. And that Pro Football Focus list that you mentioned, or that I brought up, it certainly kind of validates that for as excited as we are about this team, it's one of the remaining weaknesses even after free agency in the draft.
Does that viewpoint and kind of using the Pro Football Focus ranking as a lens, because, you know, any outlet can rank anything any specific way, and everyone's got their own opinion or slice of the pie and how they want to look at it. But viewing it through using that Pro Football Focus analysis as a lens of the Broncos going into this season with the moves that they made and the players that they have returning are basically a bottom third receiver room in the NFL or close to it. So with that frame of mind, does it make sense to turn around and pay Courtland Sutton $23, $24, $25 million a year when best case scenario factoring in Courtland Sutton, you're in the bottom third?
No, I don't think so. You know, I know he's going to want some incentives at the bare minimum, just like last year. Most people think he's going to stomp his feet if he doesn't get a new deal, but I'm going to tell Courtland, let's play this out. Go do it again, and then I'll take care of you. People forget he was not the same guy after he tore his ACL for 3 straight years. He caught 10 touchdowns with Russ the one year, and then last year he really did look like Courtland Sutton again. But for a guy who's soon going to be on the wrong side of 30, I'm not in the business of dishing out another long-term extension. He's already gotten one from the Broncos. If he does it again this year, stays healthy, high level, then we can talk. But I think there's this assumption that Courtland's going to get paid between now and training camp, and I'm not sure that's the best idea.
And by the way, during the time that you referenced there, where the 3-year period where Sutton was having to fully try to recover, not just, physically, but mentally to become the receiver that he was coming out of college, he was paid pretty handsomely for a good number of those years. George Payton extended both Sutton and Tim Patrick before he had to, and at a dollar amount that was telling you, hey, this is probably more than they may be worth right now, but we think that it'll be a bargain on the back end. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But I don't like the notion that Courtland Sutton has been this, playing for pennies all this time. When in fact, I don't think that he was, especially given how long it took him to kind of come back to the form that we're seeing right now. When I was talking to Philip Lindsay last week about the number 2 wide receiver room, I kind of looked at it. It was 3 different categories that you look at, and I kind of want you to run through this exercise with me. When it comes to the number 2 wide receiver, I think you can break it down into who should it be, who do you think it will be, and then who's the best case scenario candidate for it to be for the Denver Broncos. And that's where you can add a little subjectivity into it. My read on it was it probably should be Marvin Mims. I mean, he's kind of the second guy in terms of production, and he possesses breakaway speed and a different skill set to Courtland Sutton. But based on the way we saw some of the emergence last season, my feel on it was I think it will be, at least in week one against the Titans, Devon Vele. I think he presents a body type similar to Tim Patrick and somebody that can mirror Courtland Sutton and give you similar skill sets on both sides of the field. And that's, a pretty strong projection for a sophomore 7th round draft pick in the NFL. But I think the best case scenario, whether it's in week 1 or by the time we get to week 10 or 11 for the Broncos to emerge as the number 2 wide receiver, would be Pat Bryant, the 3rd round pick out of Illinois, because I think he in some ways represents the future of the wide receiver position for the Denver Broncos and somebody that could help maybe take the mantle from a guy like Courtland Sutton, who may not be here after this upcoming season. What say you, Will Peterson?
Yeah, you didn't mention Troy Franklin in any of those
Nope.
3, and I'm not going to mention him in any of my 3. It should be Marvin Mims Jr. It could be Marvin Mims Jr. It will be Marvin Mims Jr. Let's just not overthink this. The plays he made, Broncos fans can all recall the touchdown against the Browns, the 2 against the Bengals, the 1 in week 18 against the Chiefs. That guy exploded in the second half of the season last year. Let's not try to square peg round hole this. Marvin Mims Jr. is their second best wide receiver. He's my answer to all 3 of your hypotheticals.
Well, and I'm not necessarily saying I would hate that outcome either, because to be honest with you, one of the things that I think Bo Nix possesses that so many Broncos quarterbacks in the revolving door, the carousel that came before him didn't, is a pretty spectacular looking deep ball. And outside of Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims is the best suited to try to capitalize on that arrow in Bo Nix's quiver. And we saw it manifest itself a number of times in the last season. And that's something that Courtland Sutton isn't really going to give you week in and week out, because that's just not the type of receiver that he is, especially getting toward the wrong side of the 30-year line, which in the wide receiver world starts to make you feel a little ancient. Will, shifting gears to the NBA, we have all been speculating about what potential moves the Denver Nuggets should or could make, assuming they hire a GM at some point in the future. So for GM TBD, there are some potentially intriguing options or decisions that they could look at in terms of improving this Denver Nuggets roster ahead of the 2025-2026 season and finding a way to break out of that first round, second round playoff wall that they seem to be hitting once again. And the 2 names that stick out to me, one is Bruce Brown, who we've mentioned before. He could be like a potential mid-level exception, vet minimum type of candidate, and somebody that clearly hasn't lost his affinity for the Colorado and the Denver area, as he makes well known on social media, showing up to events and to games and things like that. And the other comes now as a result of some other moves that are happening across the conferences in the NBA, and that would be Gary Harris, who's expected to be bought out and could potentially be a free agent candidate pickup option this offseason for any team, should the Nuggets be interested in bringing back both or either of those guys if they can make the magic work financially.
Yeah, well, Orlando made that big trade for Desmond Bane, and they declined Harris's team option. So he is going to be a free agent. They said, we can't afford to pay you $7.5 million. So he will be out there. The problem, you go look at it, his numbers declined every year in Orlando. And last year, Richie played in 48 games, averaged 3 points a game on 14 minutes. I mean, Gary Harris's career has done this, and what arguably was the greatest trade in Denver Nuggets history, bringing in Mr. Nugget, Aaron Gordon, to help them secure a championship. That said, NBA rosters are huge. They're huge. Why not bring back Gary Harris, give him a jersey? Worst case scenario, he's just on your bench. He's a veteran leader. He's a DeAndre Jordan type role. Best case scenario, he remembers I still can play basketball. I'm 30 years old. You know, it's funny we talk about that with Sutton. Well, in the NBA, 30 doesn't feel all that crazy old. And if he can play 12 to 15 minutes a night, get that Jokic boost that everyone gets, feel reinvigorated by coming back to the city where he started his career. And don't forget, he averaged 17.5 points per game one season for the Nuggets, shooting 40% from three. So I just think Orlando kind of ran its course with Gary. I am wide open to this idea, Richie. Again, worst case, he's just one of your vets that fills out the bench. Who cares? Best case, he can still play and is in the rotation. I think he'd be embraced by fans. I think he'd be embraced by the locker room. I see very little downside to bringing in Gary Harris as long as the money is some sort of vet minimum type thing.
Yeah, and that's ultimately it's going to come down to money, and a lot of it hinges on Dario Saric probably opting out of his player option, which, you know, you never know or can't control if you're the team how he approaches that. And we'll see what they decide to do, if they decide to do anything in pursuit of bringing Russell Westbrook back after declining his option. But with either one of these guys, and I think it would be maybe a little bit far-fetched to try to get them both or bring them both unless they were both so willing that they, you know, helped you out on the back end as a team. But you need better bench help, and you needed veteran presence that was lacking. Russ was brought in to be both of those things, the leader of the bench unit and a veteran presence. And I think he was better at one of those things than the other. So if you're not going to bring Russ back, you're still going to need those guys. You're still going to need a Jeff Green. You had Bruce Brown in the title year as well. And so if those guys can come back and be pieces 7, 8, 9, or 10 throughout the regular season and potentially shore up the back end of a postseason rotation, I'm all for it. And I think that both guys experienced decline, Gary Harris more so once leaving Denver. But as we saw with almost any free agent that's come in during the Jokic era, you basically play your best basketball alongside the best basketball player and one of the better distributors in the world in terms of a basketball player. So I'm not necessarily afraid of that. And I think that they've got to do, GMTBD has to do something, because you can't just keep running this thing back and expecting things to be different. That is ultimately the definition of insanity.
Yeah, totally. And to be clear, Bruce Brown is more intriguing from a pure basketball standpoint.
Yes, agreed.
I can sit here and confidently say Bruce Brown would be in your playoff rotation. I'm not so sure about Gary Harris. But, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to get creative here. And guess what? If these guys want to be here and they want to take less, maybe they are your best options. And we're not just doing this for nostalgic purposes. We're doing it because it makes sense from a basketball standpoint and a financial standpoint.
There's another pretty prominent name in the world of hockey that says he may want to be here, at least if you believe some reputable insiders and whispers coming out of the NHL. And that is the man, Jonathan Taves, the center, the legendary Blackhawks leader, who spent a lot of time away from the game recovering from COVID-related illnesses and SIRS and things of that nature, but is looking to make a return to the NHL and supposedly, according to reports, has interest in the Colorado Avalanche, who also have a Taves of no relation, and the Winnipeg Jets as potential landing spots for him to try to make a move. You would figure that Jonathan Taves would probably slot in as like a third-line center type of player, and financially could be cheaper than the third-line center you have now in Charlie Coyle, who you just acquired this offseason. Will, what are your thoughts on the potential for the Avalanche to bring in a guy like Jonathan Taves from a financial standpoint and a fit standpoint heading into the 2025 season?
Yeah, I like the idea because he is going to be, a couple $1,000,000. And if you trade Charlie Coyle, making over $5 million, boom, you just saved yourself $3 million right there. And oh, by the way, This guy's got 3 Stanley Cup rings. He's got a Conn Smythe to his name. He's another veteran leader in the locker room. Now, I know they still have Nathan and Gabe and Kale and Valeri and Arturi, but maybe bringing in a guy who's done it elsewhere as a veteran presence would help this team get over the hump. Clearly, Jonathan Taves has no interest in going back to the Blackhawks. He wants to chase a 4th cup before he calls it a career. I would love this, man. I think it's a great idea for the Avalanche because the leadership, the championship experience, and you save money. I wasn't impressed with Charlie Coyle once he got here in the postseason. This, to me, would be a clear upgrade. I would love if we find out in the next few days that Jonathan Taves has picked the Avalanche. They move Charlie Coyle, maybe move a Sam Girard, a Ross Colton, a Josh Manson, or even a Marty Necas. And now all of a sudden we're looking at $8 to $10 million in cap space. And when all those lists come out the day after the Stanley Cup final ends, and you see Colorado 32nd in the league with $1.2 million, start to get creative to figure out how we can make this situation a little bit better.
Well, I think the team that just won their 2nd consecutive Stanley Cup trophy and the Florida Panthers would tell you that they probably don't regret going down that path that you've just described, bringing in a guy like Brad Marchand, who spent plenty of time and prime years of his career with a different team and is now bringing that veteran leadership and experience to Florida and helping them go back to back. Will, selfishly on the way out, because you brought up his name, I will ask you about Marty Necas, who appeared on Frank Saravalli's offseason trade targets list that he put together every year around the NHL based on intel that he hears from all the different teams across the league. And when I saw that, immediately my head went to what an absolute nightmare scenario it could be for the Avalanche if, specifically for Chris McFarland, if he ships out a cornerstone franchise player like Mikko Rantanen, a perennial 100-point scorer in the league, and then does it with the mindset of breaking up that production, building depth to spread out across from the top 6 to the bottom 6, and then the main focal point player that he tries to replicate Mikko's production around, Marty Necas from Carolina, decides to bet on himself, doesn't want to re-sign with the Avs with 1 year left on his deal at 6.5 AAV, wants to go a full season to try to play himself into the 9, 10, 11 plus $1 million range in the offseason, and then leaves Colorado, that will have completely emptied the cupboards. And even for somebody like me, who saw the logic and was justifying, at least in principle, the decision to trade Mikko Rantanen, even I would have to raise my hand and say, you know what? In hindsight, this went wrong in every possible way from trade the day the trade went down to now. How would you, Will Peterson, feel about that potential nightmare scenario?
Yeah, it's a bad case of deja vu. Here we are again, right? If you tell me, well, we had to trade Mikko because he couldn't walk for nothing, even though you did it with 6 weeks still to negotiate, well, then you got to trade Marty because he can't walk for nothing. I mean, that's the position Chris McFarland has gotten himself in. We had that report from Sportsnet that he wasn't, quote, overly thrilled with his time with the Avalanche. I don't know what that means other than maybe he can't handle playing with Nathan McKinnon, who's super high demanding of his teammates. So, yeah, I mean, the trade's already an F, Richie. It's an F-. It's terrible. The guy ended your season with a hat trick in the 3rd period of Game 7. They don't write Disney movies like this. You can't script something like that happening. Now, if you trade Marty Necas, inevitably for a little less than he's worth because the new GM's scared about him walking, then the Mikko trade goes to a G-. I don't know. It's just where we're at on the letter grade scale. This is a doomsday scenario, although I will say, if Necas doesn't want to be here,
yeah,
enjoy the Sharks, bro.
Yep.
Enjoy the Ducks. Enjoy the Sabres. Fine by me.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. That was my first thought. If the grass ain't green enough for you, playing on a top line with Nathan McKinnon on a team that has championship aspirations and Stanley Cup potential, there's a lot more places you could find around the United States of America that play worse hockey than that. Will, on the last thing here, it looks like we have an audience participation question. Mel, one of our loyal listeners, has a question for you that she wants to know, and Trey's going to throw that up on the screen here momentarily because it's not often that we get pointed, directed questions on the day we have guests. So please ask Will how he can consider Taves an upgrade over Charlie Coyle. That's ridiculous. Cheaper, yes, but Coyle is easily better and a younger player. Will, is Mel crazy, or is there smoke to that fire?
Well, Mel, he's definitely younger. I don't know if he's better. What's his resume versus Taves' resume? We got to we got to bring in the leadership and the cups and the fistful of rings and all that into this conversation. Like, Mel, I'm sorry, but name me the play Charlie Coyle made in those 7 games against the Stars. I can't think of one that comes to top of mind. So I get it. Taves is a little bit of a lottery ticket. To Mel's point, that is fair. He's a little lottery ticket. But guess what? Even if he's not great, I think Jack Drury showed enough that he can be your third-line center, and then Taves is your fourth-line center. That wouldn't be the end of the world either. Jack Drury played better than your traditional fourth-line center in the NHL. So, Mel, the other thing on this is they have $1.2 million in cap space. Like, I'm sorry, someone's got to go. If it's not Coyle, then it's Colton, it's Girard, it's Manson. Like, there's going to be names that, as fans know, Richie, that get traded in the next few weeks.
Yeah, no, I think that they're in a little bit of a pickle. They've got a little bit of a sticky wicket in the same way financially that the Nuggets find themselves financially hamstrung just a little bit. And I think this offseason, with GM TBD and GM maybe not for much longer in Chris McFarland, if things continue to decline, both teams could find themselves struggling to keep that window open that we thought maybe even just a year or two ago was blown wide open for both franchises to compete for championships. Will, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate everything you do at DenverSports.com. We'll catch you in about 85 minutes sitting in with our guy, Zach By, on The Drive, which will be appointing listening for me, myself, and we'll catch up again soon, my friend.
All right, thanks for having me, Richie. Talk to you soon, man.
Appreciate it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your hump day. It is Juneteenth tomorrow. We will be back out on Friday at noon, catching you up on all the latest in the world of Denver sports in the last 48 hours. We'll see you then.